Hugh Hilton is a mergers and acquisitions master, turnaround CEO, and commercial real estate mastermind. He has an amazing ability to see the most challenging business situations beyond the facts he's been presented, expanding his aperture to recognize the possibilities for success. Hugh co-founded A&M Capital Real Estate in 2009, serving as the CEO, overseeing billions of dollars in real estate deals over the years. Reflecting on a wide-ranging career of corporate restructuring deals, commercial real estate asset purchases, and an array of private equity deals, Hugh has arrived at a framework for how he conducts business known as the 6 C's. Hugh is the co-author of a powerfully insightful new book called Business is War, which he wrote with high 9-figure global entrepreneur JT Foxx. I'm Damon Davis, and this is my discovery diary with business mogul, JT Foxx's business coach, and golf aficionado, Hugh Hilton. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you making time. This is really, really cool. Thank you.
Pleasure. How'd you enjoy the book?
The book was really great. I was rereading your chapter this morning because it had been a couple of weeks since I went through it. And I was like, man, this guy's got some stories. Just really, really fascinating stuff. Between you and GT, honestly, it was really good. So, and thank you for being a contributor. I thought you brought some really unique insights. And I love the 6 C's, which I'd love to get into at some point too.
I appreciate that because it took me many years to put together, just to kind of, it all came together finally. And then I realized that part of this was the fact that I was born left-handed, then turned into a right-handed person. That's how I was able, by using both sides of my brain, to do things a lot of things that right-handed people weren't able to do, or left-handed people weren't able to do. But since I was using both sides of my brain, it really works. And people just kind of hear me say that and they go like, huh? And I tell them, I said, think of it if you were in a street fight and you have to tie one hand behind your back and you're fighting somebody with 2 hands. What do you think would win the fight? And they go, well, the person with 2 hands. I go, yeah. So think, if you're right-handed, you're using your left hemisphere and that's it. So you need to do something consciously to develop your right hemisphere of your brain, which is your creativity and curiosity part of your brain. Conversely, if you're left-handed, you've got great ideas, you're very curious, but you don't have great organizational skills or analytical skills. So you need to consciously develop those skills to be a complete, successful business person.
That is a wonderful insight. Do you mind if I just ask, how did you end up going from right to left? I think you've said this before, but this is not a typical thing, right?
Oh, it isn't. Back when I was born, Damon, if you were left-handed, you were considered to be part of the devil, apparently. I mean, I didn't understand that. So my parents and the schools turned me into a right-handed person. So I started writing. It was really interesting because when I was young, I was really curious and creative. I won little art awards and stuff like that. And then they turned me into a right-handed person. And all of a sudden I started becoming really analytical. And my artistic skills just kind of took a second seat to developing the other side of my brain. And then when I was doing deals, it was fascinating because I'll tell you, I did a huge restructure on one of the largest at that time mass merchants, which was called Fedco in Los Angeles. And that was the concept that Sam Walton came down from Bentonville to look at and said, wow, what a great concept. You sell everything under one roof. So it's one-stop shopping. And then he went back and created Walmart based on this business concept. So this company got in trouble, and I was hired to be the CEO to turn the company around, and I'm there 3 days, and the company cuts off all credit to the bank. So I'm standing in a store, I get the phone call, and I'm thinking, oh my God. And I have my director of store ops, the store manager, and the chief merchant, and this lady's checking out through the checkout. And this bottled water goes through the scanner and rolls down the little ramp to be put in the bag. And I said, see that bottle of water? They said, yeah. And I said, how long does it take you to get that back in the store? And thinking back on, I think like why did I ask that question? What was that all about? But where it led to was fascinating. They said, well, it goes to our 1.5 million square foot distribution, sits in a queue for 10 days. Day 11, it's picked and it's back in the store day 12. I said, and how do you pay for that? He said, well, we pay COD. So I'm thinking like, how about this? How about we sell that bottle of water and we get it back in the store the next day? They go, can't be done. Nobody does it that way. What do you know? You've only been here 3 days. And one of my first C is choice. And so I realized from doing all these other restructures that right-handed people are routine-based people and they don't like change. And another interesting fact about right-handed people is they don't like to be told what to do. So I'm thinking like, okay, so I'm going to have to get a little creative here, right? So I said,
I'm feeling attacked.
well, I'm feeling like this isn't going well. So I said, well, you're kind of doing it already. You're just waiting 10 days to do it. So we could work overtime and get it done and get it right back in the start. No. Like I said, you don't know anything. And I said, and so instead of arguing, I pivoted and I said, you're right. What do I know? I've only been here 3 days, but here's something I do know. And they looked at me and I said, I just got a call from the bank and they cut off all credit to the company. So we can continue doing it the way you're doing it, and none of us will have a job in 30 days. Or we can do this thing that you say can't be done, and somehow if we figure out how to do it, we'll all have a job in 30 days. So you choose. And they go, well, if you put it that way, I guess we could try to do it. And I said, no. I'm listen. What would you like to do? So I gave them the choice. I guess we could do that. We could try to do that. So we launched off in doing that. And we didn't do it just for the water. We did it for everything we sold. In 45 days, I paid off $60 million in bank debt. Just for paying no bank debt. Just doing that one thing. And then when I thought back on it, I thought like, wow, what was it? What was it that triggered that thought in my mind? It was a curiosity thought, but it was fascinating because generally a right-handed person would say, oh yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was the C that came to mind for me as you started speaking, was that it was probably going to be related to curiosity with that first bottle. So you did throw in choice.
And
let's go through the 6 C's real quick, because I think it's important to outline what they all are. But what I'm ultimately interested in is, everybody's got a favorite child. I'm interested to know what your most prominent C is. So the C's are choice, curiosity, creativity, commitment, compassion, and communication. What is the one that you find that you deal with the most? There's always a favorite child.
Well, it's interesting because they all come into play generally in everyday life. So, I start with, hey, everything starts with a choice. So, whether you get up and you decide to do this, to do that. So everything's a choice. And even in terms of making an attempt to be successful in a company, most people, they fail because they give up too soon. They choose not to continue to push forward. They just say, I guess this is a flop. I'm not going to make it. And they just fail before they succeed. So I would say probably the biggest one for me, where there's actually a combination, is the curiosity, because I go into all these different companies and I know nothing about the companies when I show up. So, and I've got to fix them really fast because people's livelihoods and their prosperity depends on it. If I fail, then thousands of people lose their jobs, and that's a lot of responsibility on my shoulders. So I really focus on the curiosity and the creativity, and that's probably my strongest suit, because I just kind of take the analytics as a given. I'm, obviously very analytical. So I can get really in the weeds and down in the detail in terms of KPIs and how we're doing this and stuff like that. But generally, most of the solutions come from the curiosity and the creativity because, for example, when I took over a large casino up in Reno in the Great Recession, when I got there, everybody was scared shitless. They had no idea what to do because they were all right-handed. So they were routine-driven people, and we're in a Great Recession that was unlike anything other than the Depression. So nobody had gone through something like that, so they didn't know what to do. So as a result, they were doing nothing. So I get up there and I said, okay. I drew a circle, big circle on the kind of chalkboard, and then I said, "See that?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "That's the known. That's where you live." I said, and I drew another circle that intersected the circle, and I said, "That's the unknown. That's where I live." And I said, "And I'm really comfortable living there." I said, "You're not comfortable at all living in the unknown. So when it's something you don't know and what to do, what do? You just do nothing because you're not prone to charge forward." So I said, "We're going to develop a strategy here while everybody else is frozen in fear and they don't know what to do. And by the time we execute, we're going to get so far down the road that they won't have a chance to catch us." And that ended up in the high level summary is we were the only casino in the entire state of Nevada that had positive gaming comps in 2009.
Mm.
We
Yeah, I
went
remember the
from,
story. Yeah.
yeah, we went
About
from,
this at mega success.
yeah, we went from number nine in our competitive set to number three.
It's amazing.
And what I did, one of the fascinating things I did is once I fixed the operations, I couldn't get the high value customers out of the other casinos because the whole way the casino industry is organized is based on players clubs. And the business model is you start at the bottom, you work your way up, spend a lot of money, do all this stuff at the casino to earn higher statue. So
Yeah.
clearly they
From the
weren't
loyalty program, right?
that way. So they weren't going to leave those casinos where they had high stature to come to my casino and start at the bottom and work all the way up, particularly in the middle of a recession. So what did I do? I turned the entire casino model upside down and I rolled out instant goal. So if you had the highest stature at one of the competitive casinos, you immediately had that same stature in my casino without having to
Really?
work your way up. Sucked all their high value players out of their casinos into my casino because it was more fun. And so I'm flying back to New York one time and I'm sitting next to this guy, we get talking and I go, "What do you do?" He goes, I'm a gaming analyst." I said, "Oh, really?" I said, "I've run a couple of casinos." And he said, "Yeah, like what?" And I said, "Well, I ran Grand Sierra Resort." He goes, "You ran Grand Sierra Resort?" And I go, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "You drove my clients crazy. They could never figure out what you were doing. And as soon as they figured it out, you changed your strategy." And I said, "That's not what you're supposed to do." So
Yeah, it's really great. I'm curious about something else. It's kind of the opposite question of what I just started with.
sure.
I was really interested in what your main C is, but I can't help thinking to myself that in society, among entrepreneurs, there are probably several C's that are lacking. I'm interested in your perspective on what you would like to see more people have in terms of one of the C's.
Well, I think that, if you wanted, uh, obviously creativity and curiosity are really important. Matter of fact, just a little side note, when I flew to Johannesburg to give a speech with JT to about 5,000 people in Johannesburg, I finished my speech. I went through the 6 C's, explained how they all work. Then the wealthiest guy in South Africa got up and gave a speech. And somebody asked him at the end of his speech, "What is the single attribute that you attribute your success to?" And guess what his answer was?
Curiosity and creativity.
"You got it, curiosity." Well, that makes you feel pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But what's really interesting too is creativity and combined with communication too is really important. Like some of my biggest assignments, um, I used, I use, I always prepped for my pitches by going in, being curious about what the customer's product was. And so I'd go test it and evaluate it and this, that, and the other thing. And then I always didn't just do a PowerPoint and read the PowerPoint. I actually had a PowerPoint, gave it to him, but really started asking management a lot of questions, being curious about their business. And what I realized is, having sat on the other side, people particularly, they don't want to be told things, that they want somebody to engage them so they can communicate back to you what the issues are. And the best one ever, I had a $2.5 billion restructure and M&A pitch to one of the money center banks. And I went in, and most people would go, well, I actually said it to him. I said, okay, I'm about to give you a pitch unlike you've ever heard before. That got their attention.
Yeah.
Then I said, most pitches would be, hey, we're so-and-so, we're really great at what we do, and you've got a big problem here, and we're going to bring in our A team, and we're going to work through that problem, and we're going to get it solved for you. I said, subtext of that pitch is, hey, we know you're scared shitless because you have this huge debt liability that if you trigger it, it's going to result in $1 billion of debt liability to your bank. So I can charge you whatever I want because you're so scared of the outcome that you'll pay anything to get it done. So they kind of looked at me, and I said, now here's my pitch. I've turned around a lot of corporations, distressed corporations, and I have yet to ever see a bank successfully do that. So my advice to you is that you sell this position as fast as you can. The chief credit officer said, that's exactly what my intuition was telling me. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give you another free piece of information. And they said, what's that? I said, always listen to your intuition. You've got great intuition. And then I just stopped. And they said, can we hire you to do this? Nobody else got a chance to pitch. No other competition or any.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I love the creativity part. You seem to have this ability to look at a situation and not just see it for what it is, but truly have a vision for what it could be.
Exactly.
Not just the facts that are presented to you, but intelligent and curious enough to ask the questions around the sides to see what else may be, like, where can I push these margins out a little bit and
Right.
understand more of what's possible, what's available. And I find that absolutely fascinating. I guess I'd love to turn for a moment. I'm part of JT's community, and I've truly been in admiration of JT, you, Adam, Dennis, Larry, Francie. I mean, just an incredible array of folks that have true business acumen in a wide range of disciplines. One of the things that JT says is, I don't invest in businesses, I invest in people.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know, and another thing that he also talks about is you as his coach. So I'm curious about your thoughts on investing in people over the business. Some opportunities can be amazing, but if the person or the team behind the opportunity is not up to certain standards, how does that impact your decision to do business with that group?
Well, I generally, those are the assignments that I end up getting involved in. And it's a great business, but the people who are running it don't have a clue what they're doing.
Yeah.
I agree with JT, and in terms of it is all about the people. And that's one of the things. There's two things, which is fascinating. One of the C's is compassion. And for example, I'll give you a great example of how important that is. When I took over a restaurant conglomerate, and one of those was Chi-Chi's, when I was curious, and then they got in a huge amount of trouble, as you know, but I started asking a lot of questions, and I reached out to the regional managers, and I said, I don't understand why you're trying to change your product from comfort food with a Mexican title to true Mexican food in the Midwest. I said, we don't eat Mexican food in the Midwest. We like to have our tequila based drinks and a lot of fun, and then comfort food with a Mexican name. So I said, let's look at your sales, your menu changes. So when I looked at the menu changes, I noticed every time they changed the menu, sales went down. So I said, this is fascinating. So I said, what was your number one selling SKU? They said, chicken quesadilla. And I said, what is that? They said, well, it's creamy based chicken with some carrots and peas and things like that. And I said, oh yeah, chicken a la king. Yeah, we love that in the Midwest. I said, what happened? Oh, well, it wasn't authentic, so we took it off. I said, okay, put it back on the menu. Put it back on the menu. It was the number one selling SKU in 8 days.
Mm.
I said, I called them. So I called all the regional managers back into corporate. And I asked them, I said, so what is going on here? Doesn't corporate listen to you? I said, no, corporate never asks our opinion or advice on anything. They just tell us what to do. I said, well, that seems kind of silly because corporate's based out here in California and all the restaurants are in the Midwest. And you're the closest people to the customer. So corporate should be asking you a lot of questions about what we could do better, what's the customer satisfaction, things like that. And that was the compassion. And then all of a sudden things started turning around because they felt involved and invested in the process because someone was actually asking them questions and listening to them and then adjusting strategy based on their input because they are the closest to the customer. But it's
Yeah.
fascinating that a lot of times corporations don't ask people closest to the customer. And for example, when I ran the casinos, that was huge in terms of improving performance. I mean, we had the buffet up at Grand Sierra Resort that was losing money hands over fist. So I called a meeting with my head of food and beverage and my head of gaming. So literally, I'm sitting in the middle with these two guys, and the buffet was $18 for the buffet, and it was losing money like
Yeah.
crazy. So I said to the head of food and beverage, I said to the head of gaming, I said, what do you think a compelling price point for the buffet would be? He said $7.77, like triple sevens on the lunch.
All right. Gimmicky.
Yeah, it's a jackpot. Said to the head of food and beverage and said, what do you think about that? He goes, no friggin' way. My food cost is $8.50. I'd never agree to that. So most people would have ended it right there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Instead, I turned to the head of food and the head of gaming and I said, well, let's have to get that $7.77, let's have it so you have to sign up and join the Players Club to do that. He goes, yeah, well, that'd be great. And I said, well, if that's the case, then you should be willing to pay a $2 bounty to food and beverage every time somebody signs up and goes to the buffet because you got a benefit. I said, would you be willing to do that? And he said, yeah, absolutely. So then
That's very good.
turned to the head of food and beverage. And I said, so now what? Now you're making, $9.77, which is higher than your food costs. And he goes, yeah, fine. Okay, we'll do it.
Yeah.
So
You know what, Hugh? You know what I heard in both of those stories was communication, right?
Yeah.
That's something that we haven't yet gotten to,
Right.
which is both corporate listening to the front line in order to understand what the problem is,
Yep.
but also corporate telling the front line, here's what we're seeing in the data. There was missing
Right.
communication going in both directions is what took me out of both of those stories. That's fascinating.
And effective communication is obviously the 6C. So I don't know, did you write down when I talked about effective communication, the credibility code book?
Yes, I did.
Did you buy it?
I haven't purchased it yet, but I have it in my notes. I was looking at that earlier today. I said, oh boy, I got a to-do list here.
Yeah, no, I mean, just like, JT's book. And this also is a great book for you to read as well. So,
Excellent. The credibility code. I will make sure to get that. And you know what I think I did when you said it? I put it in my Amazon cart and I didn't purchase it at that time. But now that I'm face to face with you, I will commit to buying and reading that book.
now,
Shouldn't be promoting other books. You're supposed to be talking about business as war.
well, you know what? I think that's a great book as well. And obviously you enjoyed it. So
I did.
I think the communication is a critical issue. And I've worked very hard on being an effective communicator because that's part of the whole success formula. And whether it's commitment or compassion or curiosity or creativity, you have to be an effective communicator or you're not going to be optimizing your business outcomes.
Absolutely. I'd love to turn to just current events
Sure.
for a moment, right? This
Sure.
is a weird time. I was thinking about this the other day that, COVID is commonly referred to as a black swan event. I can't help thinking that this administration is a bit of a black swan event in and of itself, right? It has just turned many things upside down in record time. Curious to know in your, turning around real estate assets, your mergers and acquisitions and all of your work, how is this current environment impacting your business dealings? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Obviously, it's in the real estate world, things are slowing down. I how should I say? Well, I don't know Donald Trump personally. I have a lot of friends that do, and I'm also I'm using the second C, curiosity. I'm very curious, and I watch exactly what he does and what his moves are and his patterns are. So you see, generally, what he does is he way overreaches, and then when things get a little crazy, then he backs off. So we have, while we're being careful, we haven't really changed our strategy dramatically because I think at the end of the day, this time from what I've seen, versus his first term, he has some more intelligent advisors around him and he's listening a little bit more to some of these people and he's a little bit more skilled at what he's doing this time. So you notice he backed right off the tariffs. I think, you'll see him back off on the head of the Fed, Powell. He likes to make a huge, and it creates a lot of, I don't want to say chaos, what he does, but I think it's part of the way he negotiates.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of coming in, I'm a lot different than he is. When I come in to negotiate something, I don't make an egregious overreach because I just think that turns off the people on the other side of the table. Then his constituents on the other side of the table, and he does these things, as you say, they're not appreciative. They go like, can't you just act like in a reasonable manner? Why do you have to go way over these extremes? Like you're going to take over Greenland and next Canada. I mean, like, I just look at that and go like, it's not going to happen.
Right.
Him being Trump. And so you just have to ignore it.
Yeah. So you've maintained your strategies. That makes sense. I mean, it may not be disruptive enough in the moment to have really truly made a change of course.
Exactly.
I guess, Hugh, as I take you out, one of the things I'm interested in is your passion. You love to play golf.
Yeah.
I would love for you to just tell me quickly what's one of your favorite courses and what's one of your favorite moments on the golf course?
How should I say? I would say there's a number of courses that I really enjoy. And I played a lot of courses. I mean, I played Augusta, but I'd say one of my favorite courses, the course I'm a member of, at Bel Air out here in California is a great golf course. Matter of fact, we had Doak restore it. And one of the interesting things Doak said about it was, because he writes a lot of architectural books on golf course architectures, he said, Bel Air has one of the best routings of any course I've ever seen.
Really?
So what I like about Bel Air is, I've been a member there for 30 plus years and I never get tired playing it.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
That's
What's one of your favorite moments on the golf course? Just a great memory.
great. Well, great memory. A great memory was, I had two of them. Great memory was I was playing golf with my son and a friend of mine, and we were on the 16th hole at Bel Air. My friend hits it to 6 feet. He turns around and he says, okay, let's see you hit it inside of that. And I said, I'm not going to hit it the side of that. I'm hitting the hole. And he goes, oh yeah, right. And I said, yeah, watch this. So I get up, I hit it, and I go, that's in the hole. You couldn't really see it because it was an elevated green. And he goes, that's not in the hole. And I said, no, that's in the hole. So we walk up and I look around. Do you see any other balls on the green? And I said, oh, look at that. It's in the hole.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Silly you.
Twice. I'm playing with another. I played on another friend of mine, and we were playing on the 13th hole, which is a 200-yard plus par three. And he said, "What are you going to hit?" I said, "I'm going to hit a 5-wood." He goes, "That's too much club." I said, "No, I'm going to choke it down, hit it right in the hole." He goes, "Oh yeah, right." And I said, "Yeah, what? Right, watch this." So I hit it. We're walking up. You can't see the green because there's a bunker in front of the green. So we walk up to the green. I said, "I don't know. I don't really see any other golf balls in the green." I said, "Where do you think that went?" "Oh, look at that. It's in the hole."
I love it. Hugh Hilton, this has been absolutely amazing. Thanks for your time. The book is Business is War, and I look forward to seeing you out in California one day, man. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Raymond. You have a great
Thank you.
rest.
You too. Bye-bye.